Welcome to Modern Conception, a new era of fertility decoded. I am Brittney Sobel, founder of It Is Sloane.
And I'm Amanda Zurawski, co-founder of It Is Sloane.
And we are joined by Katie Grossbard. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
All the way from California.
Really excited to have you.
We'll travel.
With a little casual trip across the country, no biggie. So for those of you who don't know, Katie is a content creator, attorney, and strategist based in Los Angeles, California. She has consulted on political, nonprofit, and digital media strategy for campaigns, nonprofit organizations, and companies alike. She built her platform with the primary goal of making people feel informed, not overwhelmed by current events and politics. She has a very large and impressive and loyal following on social media, and you'll share your handle at the end with us, of course. And she's a big fan of democracy and reproductive justice, and so are we. So this is a great match. Okay. Yeah. First, we want to know, what's your coffee order? As you can see, Amanda and I are big coffee drinkers. Mm-hmm. How do you start your day?
I, right now, am just an iced almond milk latte girl. Okay. I've been trying to kind of balance. I don't like having coffee every single day because I have this weird, sometimes aversion to caffeine. So I like to take days off. But I always find that then I end up having like a caffeinated tea, so I'm not really solving the problem. But
you can tell yourself there's less caffeine.
Yeah, I'm
tea.
Trying a little bit.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
Yeah.
We love an iced latte.
We do, yeah. All right, so we're going to jump right in.
Let's do it.
And what we want to talk about today is the decision, the very personal decision to proactively freeze your eggs, and especially for young women who may be in their 20s, they're not thinking about building a family yet. Maybe they're not even sure whether they want a family. But they have this opportunity that, we didn't have 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so you are someone who made this exact decision. And so we want to hear a little bit about that process and why you made that decision.
Yeah, it's so exciting to have a conversation like this because I think talking about it from every side is helpful. Just being in a space that feels like safe to have conversations and both talk about the important things and the emotional things and also like the weird and funny things about this entire process. I think that the answer in terms of why I chose to proactively freeze my eggs, I did it at 30, but I'd been thinking about it for a long time, and I think there's kind of two parts to the answer. One is pretty basic and familiar to folks, which is I knew I wanted to have a family. I was turning 30. I was single. I was just anxious about what ifs. I didn't want to put myself in the position of feeling like I should have done something and I didn't do it. I don't like regrets. So I knew I wanted to do that. The side that's a little more nuanced and emotional is that I think as I've looked back on it and tried to put the pieces of why I made the decision to do it together, I think there was part of me that when I was in high school, I was sexually assaulted. So for 4 years,
I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Gosh.
We love therapy. But for like 4 years, I would have anxiety attacks if any man would touch me. Like if there was a hand on my back, like it just was really, really hard. And I think in my brain, I had kind of gotten to this place of being like, oh, I'm going to have to do this on my own. Mm-hmm. This isn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So like, we're going to have to come up with an alternative scenario. And I didn't really think about that when I was actually doing it. And then when I thought back, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I do think that played a role in it.
Yeah.
But I am ultimately someone who is a planner regardless. Mm-hmm. So I think I would always have been thinking about my future and making sure that I had every option that was possible. And I'm so grateful that I could do that. But I think those were kinds of the motivating factors.
Wow. Thank you for being so vulnerable. I think, this process and this journey makes you feel so vulnerable. And it's nice to be able to reflect and share with our listeners. I'm curious, when you made the decision, did you share that decision with your friends and family? Were you vulnerable in the moment?
Yeah, I was pretty open about wanting to do it. I had a few people in my life my life who were older than me and had kind of been, I don't want to say like forced into freezing their eggs, but forced into fertility things that I had been aware of, and they were very encouraging. They were the ones that pointed me towards my doctor. They were like, you really, if you want this, like I would, and you can do it, I really would want you to do it. And my friends and family were all super supportive, but just not knowledgeable on it. So like everyone can be very supportive and say like, let me know if you need anything. That sounds great. But I was kind of one of the first of my friends to go through it. I now have a ton of friends who have done it, and we can talk about, you know, how those conversations have gone as well. But I think in the moment, it's isolating kind of regardless of if people are supportive, I found. Like it was great. People were super, you know, nice and encouraging, but you are going through it just yourself and in your body. And there is something kind of isolating about that.
Yeah. Totally. It feels physically and emotionally isolating. Amanda and I both did IVF. And whether you have a partner and you're doing it together or alone, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster. But I'm glad to hear that you had support from your friends and family. Did you have anyone who judged you like you're too young, this is unnecessary?
I do think the age thing was a part of it. I think there were some people who didn't understand why I would want to do it so young. And even honestly, one of my doctors, not a gynecologist or a reproductive doctor, but a different doctor, said, oh, you don't need to worry about that now. Or like, you don't need to do that for, I think in their mind, it was like 32 or 33. They were like, you could wait. And I was like, but why? If all you guys are saying at the end of the day is the younger you are, the like better in theory your eggs are, why would I wait another 2 years? And again, at this time I was single and in the LA dating scene, which is tragic. And so luckily I have a partner now, but I was like, why on earth, what am I going to do for the next 2 years? I'm just going to keep, you know, drinking martinis with people.
I want more on that, by the way, Katie. Like for those of us who don't know, take us back. You're 30. You are an attorney at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you practicing law?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're living in LA, practicing law, single, depressed.
Well, hilariously, I was a divorce attorney. And
I
me
think
too. That's actually like you were too?
Yes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yes.
I think there's something really funny about being in family law while you're trying to figure out what your family is going to look like, and the way you think about marriage and kids and the commitment of that, and dealing with people, you know, who had frozen embryos or who had like that was part of the divorce.
Yes, and what to do with them.
Exactly. It's just, it adds a lot of nuance to the way that I thought about it. But yeah, continue.
So you're a recovering matrimonial attorney.
Yes.
Cheers. Cheers. Okay, and so you're practicing matrimonial law. You're single. You ask your family members, where do I go? They tell you the doctor to go to. And did you do any sort of due diligence and meet with other doctors, or you just went where they said and ran with it?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story. I called the doctor that they recommended, and there was a wait list. It was like I wasn't going to be able to have an appointment with this doctor for a month.
Of course.
And at the time, I was like, that's fine. No worries. Not a problem. And then it was the one thing in my life, because I always do research, I really didn't think about it for the month. I was like, okay, we're just going to, I'll go, and I'll deal with it then. And I went in, and I had the like one-on-one consultation in the office where you're not like in stirrups, you're just like chatting.
Right.
And we had a great, you know, conversation. I really liked him. And then I went into the other room and I was with the nurse and they were doing what they needed to do. And then as I turned, by the way, I brought my twin sister with me. I think this is fun facts. Could not do this alone. And I think that should also be stated. Yeah. I was very nervous going into the appointment. And I walk out the door of that little exam room, and there's another nurse in front of me with a mask on. And she says, Katie, but in like a familiar way.
Oh, no.
And I was like, what? who? Huh?
Oh, no.
Brings down the mask. It turns out it's someone I went to high school with.
I knew it. I knew
And
it was coming.
and she's
the
like,
worst.
like she was like the lead nurse there.
Yeah.
When I tell you godsend, I was at first, if it had been another person, I probably would have been like, oh my God, this is so bizarre. It was the best thing ever. I had no idea.
Nice.
And so there was this immediate comfort level, and she took me and my sister into her office. And she was just like, what's up? What's the plan? What are we doing? Like, let's do it. We're in this together.
Yeah.
And there was something so lovely about that. So I never got a second opinion. I never asked anyone. But she was like on FaceTime with me when I did the trigger shot. She was in it with me, which was great.
That's so great that you had that. I said the worst initially because if I had run into someone
there are
from
many
high school,
versions where it would have been
I would have been
terrible.
like, bye. Not Katie. I'm someone else who looks like her.
You said something that I think is so interesting because you came to this journey from the perspective of almost like exploratory, right? And you show up and you're like, okay, I think this is something I want to do. You don't really know what they're going to say, what they're going to find, what could possibly be, the information that they give you. Whereas I came to this journey from the opposite way, right? Like I already knew that something was wrong. And it was, okay, how do we fix this? And that's a whole new layer of stress when like you're kind of walking in blind and you don't know which way it's going to go. So I'm so glad that you had support and that your twin sister was with you. That's amazing.
And it's funny because I think when you walk into those waiting rooms, and I'm sure you know this as much as anybody, the stories that are in that waiting room span the gamut. Like you see people that are clearly so stressed, and you see spouses that are close to tears, and you see all of these people that have maybe gone 3 times that week that they've been in this waiting room. And there's so many layers to it. And I think my reference point in that moment was like the episode of New Girl where they go and do you know this episode? Where the doctor like tests them and one of them has 1 million eggs and one of them is like not doing so hot. And that's your entry point where you're like, I'm going to walk in and they're going to tell me I'm infertile.
Right.
Like, you're just like it's either great news or it's not great news. And I think I had nothing to lose in one sense, but at the same point, I also in my brain had everything to lose.
Yeah,
because I was like, I don't know any different. And part of what I think is interesting about the egg freezing process generally is that outside of the actual like the numbers and the getting eggs and freezing them, you also are on this weird educational journey of learning about your body and how it works, having nothing to do with that. I was on birth control for a decade, however many years, and then I had to get off it for this. Well, that's a whole thing in and of itself.
Right.
Figuring out what your body is going to do without that. And so I think it's such all of it is such a learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't know what you're going to learn.
And it can be, I think to your point earlier, it can be so isolating and it can be so scary. And so having a community of folks who have been through the same thing for me was so important because it helped me realize that I'm not alone. There's not something wrong with me. I'm not defective. Well, there is something wrong with me, but I'm not defective as a human. And so I'm curious, like, what did community look like for you as you were going through this journey?
Yeah, in the moment, there were definitely people that were super supportive. And, I remember one night I had to do my shots and I was at my friend's house. And I was just like sitting on her bathroom floor. And there's something really nice about not having to hide anything. You're just like, I'm sticking this thing in the fridge. And when I need it, like I'm going to get it out of your fridge. And that part is super lovely. I think I became super conscious of how important the community was after the fact when I had other friends come to me asking for advice or how it went or a doctor or what I learned from it. And so I started being so much more open about it once I had gone through it because there were things that I think I learned that I was like, you guys should know about this when you're doing it. And now I have like 6 of my friends that have all gone through it and done it in their own specific ways. And I think being able to support each other, knowing that and that's not a gamble, but like, you don't know how your body's going to react to these things. You don't know what your hormones are going to do. You don't know what the recovery is going to be like. Yeah. So as much as I can prepare you and support you, I also just have to be here to be like, that is great, or that sucks, or what's our plan, or what do you need from me, or I send you a box of croissants. Like, you got to just be able to kind of cover all the bases. But yeah, I think having people around me that were supportive was so important. And actually, during it, my retrieval date fell on a day that happened to be, it was just a weird thing that happened in my family. My mom, I think, was sick. My dad was out of town. My sister was also doing something for work. So no one could drive me to my retrieval.
It's like a real logistical issue.
It was just hold on. I have to go to Redondo Beach and what's the plan? And two of my best friends immediately were like, okay, so see you at 5 a.m. They were like, we got it, we're doing it. And one of my friends had done it already, and she was like, I got this. So one of them, only one person could come in at a time. One of them came in for the pre-meeting, made sure that I was all set with the IVs and everything, and then the other one came in the post-op, and I could hear her voice. It was the first thing I heard when I came to. And she still talks about it because she thinks I was very funny coming out of anesthesia.
I'm sure you were. You looked like that type of person who would be coming out of anesthesia with jokes.
Very funny.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of logistical challenges, one of my retrievals, I had to do 3. One of mine fell on my husband's birthday.
Wow.
And so when I was coming out of anesthesia, I kept telling him that I was going to make him eggs for his birthday.
That's cute. Did you come up with that before you went under?
Nope, I don't even remember saying it.
Okay.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get a point of reference here. You froze your eggs, you were 30. How old are you now?
32.
Okay.
Gonna be,
So relatively recently. How did that decision to freeze your eggs 2 years ago affect your life socially, emotionally, professionally? What happened thereafter? Did you all of a sudden feel free to date more freely without the anxiety of having, a clicking clock in the background?
I think yes and no. I think the retreat, and I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to stray for one moment. I think the retrieval in and of itself went well enough. So it was okay, cool, I did it, great. There were a couple people just in my spheres, especially when I started sharing it, when I shared about it online, that said some things that were not helpful. When you just face someone and you're like, that's not really the right thing to say in this moment.
Yep.
And so I had a couple moments of being like, oh my God, even though this kind of went well, all things considered, there were a couple people that were writing me being like, well, it doesn't matter, because what if they're not healthy, and what if nothing happened? They're not embryos, so they're not, it was just, I kind of was shocked that after doing something that I had been planning for and that was good in my mind, that I was kind of hit with this weird resistance and women saying things that I was like, man, come on, can't we just support each other and be happy for each other, and also be quiet when we don't need to speak? And so that kind of was a weird first moment where I was like, the recovery is not easy. I don't think people talk about that enough. And then to have someone kind of take me down a peg where I was like, oh, that's not great, was not a great start to it. But what I will say is that then thereafter, 2 weeks later, I kind of had this moment of okay, you did this thing, now you gotta go on a date, because otherwise you might just fall back on this and be like, I don't need to, I'm good, whatever.
For you.
So you gotta go on a date. And I went to swiping, as I had in the past, on Bumble, and I went on a date with this guy 2 weeks after, and my I still had my IV bruise on. They had to put one in my hand, and after trying on my arm,
the hand is the worst.
It's so bad. And so I'm sitting at this bar, and there's clearly black and blue marks on my arm, and he was like, "What happened?
What do we have here?"
And I was like, "Well, I can lie to you, or I can tell you the truth." So first date, maybe 15 minutes in, I'm like, I froze my eggs. It was very quick to the jump. This is what happened. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. And that's my boyfriend of 2 years.
Stop.
Oh, wow.
Katie,
Yeah.
I am obsessed with this story.
I love that.
It's real.
I love this. I love this because you're
Also, I
single,
love your boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
right? And you freeze your eggs thinking, who knows when I'm going to meet someone.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
you meet someone. Come on. It doesn't get better than that.
That's amazing.
People say it's a thing. I didn't know it was a thing.
I didn't,
But
Really?
Yeah.
I guess
whenever
I
I
should do
say
IVF
it, they're like,
next week.
there
Sign me up.
you go. That'll be fun.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so that's, I couldn't have planned for that part.
This is such a great story. And so
but
we're still going strong with
We're
him.
still going strong. And it made us, funnily enough, obviously, like it made us have a conversation about kids probably earlier than ordinary people talk about kids.
Yeah.
But it was an affirming reaction from someone to just be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Instead
What
of
do you
like,
want
this
to
is
drink?
creepy, like.
Yeah,
move
or
on.
just like, oh, she's really concerned about, I think my paranoia was, oh my God, she's so concerned about having kids. Like she wants to, this is, I'm not in that phase of life, whatever
Sure.
it was. Which I think can be it can be a little bit intimidating, I think, to some people when a woman is like certain and has a plan and knows what she wants. And I am kind of unapologetically that way. And so it was nice to meet someone who was like, yeah, that's great. And I'm not afraid to have a conversation about having kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think by our third date, we had fully had that conversation.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And what a great way for him to get to know, who you are as a person very quickly.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So were you working at the time that you froze your eggs?
Yeah.
Did you tell your boss?
No, I don't
Okay.
think I did.
So you were just like going for labs in the morning and then going straight to work?
Yeah, I purposely picked a doctor that was super convenient.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to just kind of sneak out on my lunch break or sneak out before work. And my incredible nurse, who is also a friend, was really helpful in making sure that like when I got there, I could be seen and just get in and out. And I think that's one of the things that I don't think a lot of people talk about it. I think on one hand, I don't think we talk about the recovery enough. And on the other hand, I don't think we talk about the amount of appointments.
Yes.
When they explained that to me, I was like, I'm sorry, I live here now, forwarding my mail to this office.
Yep.
That I had no idea when I walked in.
And it's, we talk a lot about accessibility and the inequity there. And I think it's, to your point, something we don't talk about a lot. And I had the exact opposite experience where my husband and I were thinking about starting a family. We knew we'd have to go to IVF. And my employer at the time said, every appointment you're going to have to take is PTO. I didn't have enough PTO to cover one cycle. Wow. And so I had to leave that job to find a job that would be more flexible and more supportive. Wow. And so, these are the conversations that I think we need to be having with our friends, our family, our employers, because it can be a real pain point for a lot of people.
And part of it is luck and weird timing. Like I didn't plan for my retrieval to have to be on a weekend.
Right.
It just was.
Right.
It happened to be that we thought it was going to be on a Friday, and then because of whatever was happening with the meds, it ended up happening on a Sunday. And so I didn't have to miss work.
Yeah.
But like I didn't make that happen.
Sure.
There's part of it where they just keep testing you and seeing when the right day is.
Right.
Which also bananas.
Right. Okay, so you've brought up a couple times recovery, and I think we should talk about it more.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, starting with what funny things did you say post-retrieval?
Okay, so the story she always tells is that so you come to, and the nurse is there, and she kind of immediately gave me a number, which I was like, she immediately told me how many eggs they got.
Interesting.
And I was kind of taken off guard by that, and then I heard my friend's voice, and they brought her over to me, and she pulled back the thing, and at the same time, the nurse has handed me a granola bar because they want you to eat something. I don't like chocolate, and on the bottom it was one of those where like the bottom was covered in chocolate, but the top was a granola bar that didn't have any chocolate on it. So as she came over, I was eating the granola bar like a corn on the cob because I was trying to avoid the chocolate, and so they pulled it back, and I have a weird thing with anesthesia where I cry.
I do too.
You do? Okay. Yeah. I was crying kind of happy because I heard a good number, and then eating a granola bar, like a corn on the cob.
Oh, they were probably like, she's not ready to be released.
She was
we
like,
need to move her to another unit.
She was like, are you okay? And it had also been hard for them to get the IV in. So when my other friend had left me to get the procedure done, I was also crying. And so I think she went out and was like, she's really anxious, she's nervous. And then my other friend comes in, she's like, she cried though. She's just convinced I cried the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like under anesthesia, just sobbing. But yeah.
Okay, so you've recovered from the crying. You've eaten
I've eaten my
granola bar, sans chocolate.
Yeah, half granola bar.
Then what does recovery look like for you?
Then I felt like I just wanted to get out of there. You're just like, let's go home and be horizontal. And I went to my parents' house my friends dropped me off there to recover, and I was laying on a couch, and you just you feel like super full and like uncomfortable because a lot of stuff has gone on. And then I went upstairs and I got in my childhood bed, which was also just kind of like disorienting, and then started sobbing again. And I think part of it is the emotional recovery, which is like the hormones and everything that's in your system just coming out of you. Like it's just everything that you're processing. And you're still waiting. After that, you're also still waiting to get information about how many of those are healthy. So you're still not settled on that part. And then physically, it just was much longer than I thought it was going to be. It took me, 10 days to start feeling like myself again. Just really uncomfortable and really like, you've never wanted your period so bad in your life. You're just like, how do I make this go away? Yeah. And so that part I just felt like I wasn't totally ready for. And the what you're supposed to eat and not eat.
Oh, tell us about that.
I feel like there were some things that they told me where it was like, really pay attention. I mean, the same thing of like caffeine and sugar and eating healthy foods. Like it all seems really basic, but there were some things that could just make you feel worse. And so
interesting.
I was trying to really pay attention to that. And I just remember feeling like, wow, this, in as much as the part with the shots is taxing, I just felt like that was, between the mental and the physical, so much more of a load to carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember being told certain things to eat or not eat, but I do remember having the need to eat a lot of prunes. Did anyone else have this experience?
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, I think I could use that every day. I have chronic constipation. I'll just say it. I'm Jewish, and like I have all of the GI things that you can have. And one of them is just, I mean, that's why I will chug coffee, prune juice, anything. So that's not unusual for me.
That was also something I brought up to like every friend that subsequently went through the process. I was like, just FYI, we're going to prepare for this in advance. You're really going to be having a tough time until you go.
So I want to talk about this because you talked about sort of being the mentee and then moving to become the mentor. So as the mentor to your friends, what was some advice that you were giving them along the way?
I think one part is like really be patient with yourself. Like this is such a steep learning curve. And beyond, I think a lot of people focus on like, are you afraid of needles? Like, is that going to be really stressful? And sure, I had, one friend where it was kind of a team sport and they needed help with that part of it. But mostly I feel like it's talking through the like start to finish. Also fully acknowledging that when people go to different doctors or have different things with their bodies, like they're going to have different advice and different things that they're hearing. So leaving space for like nuance. It's not everyone is going to have the same experience. And I think one of the things that was interesting for me, I don't know if you've had this, but my doctor asked me to take a pregnancy test 24 hours after the trigger shot or 12 hours, 24 hours to make sure that the trigger shot was in my system. And I didn't know that was like, you can or you can't. You don't have to do it. I, of course, am like type A teacher's pet. So I was like, of course I'll do it. But it was one of the things that I started warning my friends about because it's really weird. It's a really weird feeling. And emotionally, I didn't think about it when they were like, yeah, just take a pregnancy test and make sure it's there and it's fine. But like my first positive pregnancy test ever will be because of egg freezing. And it's a very odd thing to be like waiting for. And it made me think about just when we're talking about like proactively freezing your eggs versus going because you have to for whatever reason. I started thinking about the waiting room again. And I started thinking about all of these people that are sitting there and all they want is a positive pregnancy test. And I'm taking this test. It almost felt like weirdly selfish and not accurate. It felt very strange to me. And so I started warning a couple of my friends about that too. If they asked you to do that, like you can say no. Yeah. You also can do it, but just mentally prepare that it's kind of strange.
And so for me personally, like that's so interesting to hear. And I think this highlights why you need to find the right provider for you, because no one ever gave me that advice. I had never heard that from anyone before. This is the first time I'm hearing that, actually. It feels
like weird advice.
Well, and my first retrieval didn't work because the trigger shot didn't get into my system. And I didn't know that there was a way to safeguard that. And had somebody told me, that could have been a game changer. That's what I was told.
So I'm not a doctor, but that is what they told me. And so when I did it, and of course I took 2 because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they specifically said that was how you knew that it was in your body.
Wow. It's interesting.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Well, and we should say none of us are providers. No. So this is all anecdotal. But, any extra step I think is helpful, and any extra piece of advice is helpful.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone in their 20s or early 30s or mid 30s, late 30s, anyone who's considering freezing their eggs proactively? They're not necessarily sure that they want a child just yet, but they want to do it proactively and they're on the fence.
I think there's the one part of it that is the financial part, which is hard. And I think people, the younger you decide that it's something that maybe you're going to want to do, and if you can be proactive about either figuring out how to save money for it or, find a job whose insurance covers it, whatever it may be, I think we have to be better at figuring out how to have people have access to this kind of treatment, because it's, at the end of the day, like, it's healthcare, and it's also one of those things, not to like get too political, but it's so interesting to me when people talk about like declining birth rates and wanting people to have more children and then not supporting access to something like this. It's just, none of that makes sense to me.
Yep.
I think other advice that I would give young people is, regardless of the egg freezing part, like take a step back from that for a second and just know that your healthcare and your body and what it's capable of, like, is your responsibility. Like, you're accountable to your own body. So if you want to go, I have friends who haven't done egg freezing, but they've gone to their doctor and gotten fertility testing, or they've done a blood work to make sure that levels are acceptable or normal, in normal ranges, whatever it is, to be proactive so that you're not walking in blind, and going to doctors regularly generally is something that I think is so important and can so easily be forgotten when you're young, because you just have other things going on, or you're, at college away from home, and so you don't have your normal doctor, whatever it is, just like paying attention to that kind of stuff. And then lastly, I would say that I have friends who even, they don't know if they want kids and they froze their eggs. And I think there's also this really like empowering thing about giving yourself every option, even if you end up not wanting kids. And there are beautiful things to do with that also. Yeah. Donating eggs and being a part of someone else's journey is also a remarkable and selfless thing to do. So I think for young people who, are debating all of these questions, knowledge is power, and whatever you want to do is okay. I think there has to be some sort of like permission space of not knowing is also okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to make up your mind. You don't have to know the answer to everything.
Yeah. I think that's so important what you said about going to the doctor early and understanding your own body. And, I think especially in our late teens, our 20s, we spend so much time actively trying to not get pregnant that we don't understand, what's really going on within our own bodies. And I think it could really be a game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah. Right, Katie, this has been so fun and informative. And we really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thanks
so
for
thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.